And with about 64 days to Nigeria's 2023 presidential election, there is a projection that the first ballot in February 25 may not produce a clear winner. Well, according to a poll released by our sister publication, THISDAY, there is increasing likelihood of a runoff before a clear winner is returned by the Independent National Electoral Commission. The THISDAY poll released by the THISDAY 2023 Election Center projections are a breakdown of the new realities with implications for each candidate. Well, in its analysis of the current standing, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, can boast of 23 states where he's likely to get 25%, while his All Progressives Congress rival, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, can be confident of 20 states, where he can also pull his weight. While the candidates of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, is placed third, and that of the New Nigeria People's Party, Rabiu Kwankwaso, fourth. Both of them, according to the poll, fall far short in many states to satisfy the constitutional requirement of 25% of votes cast in 24 states. While some of the factors said to be responsible for the new realities include the presence of the candidates in each of the states, their structures and support base, capacity to mobilize, the content of their manifestos, ethnic sentiments, their popularity, and name recognition, as well as financial war chest. Well, that might just be the most important factor here. Now, while the poll recognizes that there is still a lot of time for alignment and realignment by political parties and candidates, it concludes that the chances of a runoff are increasingly possible. While reacting to the projections, the Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Organization expressed confidence in the ability of the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar to win the 2023 presidential election at the first ballot. It notes that with the overwhelming support for Atiku by Nigerians across the board, the candidate is certain to garner the constitutionally required 25% of votes in more than 24 states of the Federation. And in his reaction, Labour Party chieftain Doyin Okupe insists presidential candidate Peter Obi will win the 2023 election. Okupe says the projections from this day were false, bogus, and do not represent the actual situation on ground across the nation. All right, let's discuss this issue further as we are joined in the studio by Arise analyst Mahmud, Jega, and Dr. Sam Amadi. Thank you, both of you gentlemen. Hopefully you can help us. Okay, where do we start from? First of all, let me begin with you, Mahmud Jega. What this day has come up with, does it resonate with you, especially in terms of the parameters that have been looked into here to come to this conclusion? Let me just name a few of them very quickly. I mean, the structures, support base, capacity to mobilize, war chest, financial war chest, of course, and a few other things like ethnicity.
Well, those are certainly important parameters in Nigerian elections. But before we get to that, the issue we have now is that this poll that THISDAY published today has contradicted some other polls that other people held. Right. And all of them are supposed to be scientific polls. In every country where there are several polls, there are always some variations. But this one is more than a variation. It's totally repudiates
total departure from
the other polls. Therefore, it is important to see what the method was and how large the sample was. How did you contact people? You said by telephone, as the other poll said they did. Well, a lot of Nigerians have telephone, but the problem is that a telephone sample in Nigeria has many problems. Some of the poorest people in the remotest rural areas, they still don't have telephone. Exactly, so you cannot reach them. And also the culture of opinion poll is very new in this country. Many people do not answer phone call from a number that they don't know.
Right.
And if I answer a call from a number and you just tell me who are you going to vote for next year, I don't know you.
So you might not want to offer that information?
I don't think I would like to. Although the poll said something about some percentage of people who did not provide the answer. So really, you know, you have to settle on the methodology before we even talk about the results. This is the way I see it.
Dr. Sam Amadi.
Well, I think, like he says, on the face of it, it might look like this contradicts the earlier poll by ANAP, NOI, reputable polling center. I think next year Consulting did. I think we've also had about 3 or 4, you know, different polls. But look, if you read carefully the THISDAY poll and the narrative, this is analytics. I doubt if this is the normal, this kind of polls where sample sizes are called and interviewed. They are dealing more with, it seems to me, with analytics. They say, okay, our factors, first, presence, support. We're looking at dynamics of governance. If you look at the narrative of some of the states, the governors have shifted, the governors are doing this. They're also looking at what they call watchers, financial watchers, which is a nondescript word that can cover a lot of things. Do you have the money? People funding you? Will the money play a key role? So back to what Mahmud says, the polls that people do with sample sizes, methodology well defined, are direct empirical polls that say, this is what the people say to these questions. A projection based on analytics, which is not bogus. I mean, like, though it says false, there's nothing false about it. But they have to put it in its class. This is not a poll that says 40,000 people were interviewed, or 22 million people, or 1,000 people were interviewed through telephone or mailing questions, and this is a report. This is a poll that says, this is based on this analytics, this is what we're projecting. So, in a sense, it's not false or bogus, but at the same time, but the problem is that it diverges from what these other polls say. So one has to reconcile in a way. If they are empirical polls, then it's a problem, because mathematically, it doesn't matter the sample size. What they tell us is that if you use 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, as long as those methodologies are followed, you might actually have not much variation if you do a scientific poll. So first reaction is, this is a sensible, de facto, what things are. If you have to look at the projections based on political factors, it makes sense. Now, you are going to overlook other things. You are overlooking change factors, for how people are reacting to socioeconomic crisis. For example, a ruling party has been there for 8 years, okay? Some people feel they have not done well enough. How do people feel towards the main opposition, PDP? How do people feel about maybe northern to northern back, or Muslim ticket? How do people feel about a P2B? So those factors are not going to be captured in this kind of poll, because they're looking at aggregates, political behavior, dynamics, governance, structure, who can mobilize. You're not looking at individual expressed preferences. So the outcome, I'm not surprised, diverges. But whether at the end, the reality bears out these days analytics, or bears out this more empirical, number-based poll, is what we're going to figure out.
Okay, now if we're to break down and follow exactly how this day has done, you know, starting with the North Central, you know, and all of that, it says the Northwest more or less holds the key. And if you look at the above chart, yes, that's it there on the screen. Let me just refer to what I have here on my laptop, especially when it comes to the undecideds. To what extent do you think that this undecideds can actually change the dynamics of the outcome of the election?
Well, of course, the larger the number of undecided, then there is the higher the chances that these things can change. You know, I appreciate what Dr. Amadi has said, but the issue is if you actually go ahead and assign numbers like this, that 30%, 20%, 40%, it suggests you did some empirical polling. Otherwise, you can really sit back and say, well, from what I know of Kaduna State, the investment by the candidates, the party that controls the structure that they have, this and that, I can project that so party may have an advantage there. You can do that. But then probably you wouldn't go ahead and assign a percentage.
Like in the Northwest, for example, from Katsina, Jigawa, Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, Obi records nil. Kwankwaso, well, not surprisingly, he has some, not too high and not too low numbers on the average. 30% in Katsina, 25%. But the undecideds are where the issue is. 5%, 5% or all the way to 10%. How much difference will this 15, 10%, 5% make to the outcome? So that's the point.
Mahmud's statement, this narrative, if you look at each of the states, they did not say, out of the social number of people polled, interviewed, social percentage, they talked more about the shift. For example, in Sokoto, they talked about, they said, look, Tinubu is doing well. We see Tinubu moving a little more than, even though it's a PDP state. A place like Kaduna, they put Obi up to
a more cosmopolitan
area. So first, the undecided here are so minimal. If you look at 5%, 5%. So let's take those figures as, like I said, credible and clear empirical figures. 5%, 10%, there's none of those Northwest undecided that's more than 10 or 15%, the most, which is somewhere in Jigawa. If you look at the difference between Atiku, who in Jega, for example, has 35%, and of course, Tinubu has 25%. That, and the Neil, that 15% could probably give, both of them have crossed the 25 threshold. So it might, if you put it all to Tinubu on this figure, he wouldn't win, most likely not win. So what he can predict that the undecided here is so small that it won't change the fact that two major candidates are getting 25 if he stays this way. So if Tinubu gets 1% of that 15, he still gets 25. If Atiku gets 0, he still gets 25. So that's, but if you look at places like, for example, Kano, you see that 5%, everything's already locked in. So the only person who will be struggling for that 5% to be somebody.
So what you're saying is that the undecided
is minimal.
Whichever way that you look at it, are nothing really to worry
about. To impact
as far as
on who wins or who gets qualified for the 25%.
All right, gentlemen, we'll put you on hold. We'll take a short break. And when we return, of course, we'll still be breaking all of this down. There's North Central to look at, South, South, Southeast, Southwest. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're still watching Newsnight. We're still looking at the THISDAY Election Center projections for the 2023 elections. Projections. We need to underscore that particular word. Well, my guests, Dr. Sam Amadi and Mahmud Jega, have been looking at all of this with me. A breakdown, North Central, Northwest, Southeast, South. Well, let's go to the North Central, gentlemen. In the North Central, according to this day projection, there's a mixed bag of factors responsible for candidates' stand, which is almost defying the previous extrapolation. You want to speak to that? Yes. Mahmud Jega, you take it. Yes, North Central, you can see it there. Well, the undecided still stay around 5, between 5 and 15%. So according to you, it's really nothing to worry about. Are there any figures there that really come to you as a surprise? Niger State, for example.
I cannot
really,
see.
What this day is saying? It's look, most likely this will go into a rerun,
into a runoff.
A runoff. What will be the implications of that? Are you seeing that likely to play out?
Well, I didn't conduct my own opinion poll, but honestly, from the way we have been reporting politics, personally, I think that a runoff is unlikely.
Why do you say so?
Because I suspect that one or two of the major parties will garner a quota of the votes in more than 24 states, in which case all that matters now is to have the higher number of votes, even if it is by one. If you have the highest number of votes, even if it is by one, provided you also have the spread 24 states or more, then you have really won the election. And I think that is highly likely, because since 1999, at the beginning of this republic, we have not had a runoff election. And I have not seen too much change of the political factors on the ground to necessitate that kind of situation. I have not seen.
Like what specifically? Some of these parameters, including, of course, ethnicity.
Ethnicity will always be a factor in Nigerian politics, but you know, sometimes it assumes complex dimensions. Like, for example, in this election cycle, you could say, okay, a party like APC, its strongest base of support is in the north, but its candidate is from the south. And in the case of PDP, vice versa. It is stronger in the south, but its candidate is from the north, which has created all kinds of complications. But party loyalty in many parts of Nigeria is an important factor in the voting pattern of people. There will be changes. And also,
like in Plateau State, for example, that was traditionally a PDP state, right? But it's under APC control right now.
Yeah, for the last 8 years, it has been a PDP.
And surprisingly, Peter Obi has a 35% chance. Atiku 35, Tinubu 20.
I think
Dr. Amadi.
Mahmud said, there are two possibilities. I think his argument around one person getting required spread and then a simple majority to take home the trophy is a possibility. But you see, only one thing changed. He talked about not much has changed on the ground in terms of whether in terms of revolutionary pressure or something. But the fact that we have 3 candidates, P2B has altered a little bit the equation. For example, if you look at Plateau, for example.
Yeah, but in fact, in spite of that alteration that you talk about, let me just put this in.
Yes.
With all the traction, you know, the seeming growing support for the Obidati ticket and all of that, he still comes a distant third.
No, the way people frame distant third is,
right.
Where does it start from? P2B started this campaign at the point where, what's his name, the NNPP candidate had a more structure and better outlook. That's why Kwakwaso said, why should I be the deputy? It should be Obi. So Kwakwaso, they took off where Kwakwaso had at least Kano, had maybe Jigawa, maybe had Katsina or some of those people, Northwest as a base. So if you ask me, Obi getting some of these 25% in some of these places, or 20, is a marked improvement from where he was. He was actually at ground zero. In terms of party structure that the THISDAY weighed heavily on, there was 0. So I see it in this way, that is now somebody is gaining more from 0 to 3, 4, 5. He's not going to 10. Right. Somebody is in 9 and is dropping to 8. Somebody is probably in 8, dropping to 6. So in terms of net gain, the guy who moved from 0 to 4 has actually done a lot.
Made progress.
The question is,
and chances
can that momentum continue? So if you look at this chart, even though we say, oh, it is not a real scientific or empirical polls, the person who can have a boasting right, if you ask me truly, is actually Labour Party. APC, like you said, controlled the northern states. Strong. 2 states in the southeast in terms of governorship. Almost 1 state in south-south or there. North central, about 2 or 3 states. Majority in those states. So it covered the map. But in this pool, APC is the one that has lost substantially, because some of the places where they ought to be competitive, they're no longer competitive. Buhari did well.
Like if you look at Buhari's, Obi will get 40% in Lagos.
If you look at Buhari's electoral map,
right,
he got 25% in about 2-3 southeast in 2019, and they are returning Tinubu. Atiku. No, Tinubu 5. Some places insignificant. 10. Okay, 10. So I think that's a net loss. Now, Atiku Abubakar, this poll shows, has lost southeast and some part of south-south, his major base, which is the PDP base, but has become somewhat competitive in over-competing in the northeast, northwest, as this shows, compared with where the PDP is. So you've seen some realignment. Atiku's pathway to victory lies majorly in keeping those states that this pool assigned to him in the north, getting 1 or 2, 3 in the north central, and maybe push a little bit in 2 states in the south to get to 25. Now, Tinubu has to do better in the north again to regain some of those Buhari's strongholds and hope to keep Buhari's 2, 3 states in the southeast and maybe in the south.
Right.
So, in a sense, if you look at where they were status quo 2019, the third party has had an impact. Whether it has enough impact to then get to number 2 or number 1. The evidence will argue, like the day you says, oh, we're winning Lagos. This number doesn't reflect. I mean, that's if you look at ANA pool, look at other pools, they show that they are doing better than this. But even with this, the point I make is that even with this, you can say that the man who has gained momentum is actually Labour Party. The person who has lost is actually APC. Atiku, yes, has lost zone, but being able to get this other zone that he was not leading or getting 30, 40 shows some degree of improvement.
Mahmud Jega, what about the Kwankwaso factor? Kano and Jigawa. Kano definitely is where the numbers are.
Kano has always recorded a huge numbers in the election, but you know, there are again many complications. The voters in Kano State have a history of separating their vote from the presidential to the gubernatorial.
They are that sophisticated.
They are that sophisticated. They are one of the most sophisticated voting populations in Nigeria. Don't forget that in 2011, for example, Kano State voted overwhelmingly for Buhari, CPC presidential candidate, only to turn around and they elect Kwankwaso as the governor 2 weeks later. So in Kano, they have been doing that for a long time. Even this time, I suspect that the voters in Kano State separate between the presidential and the gubernatorial. And the main drive of NNPP really is to capture the governorship of Kano State if they can. But the voters in Kano will probably calculate that the presidential candidate of NNPP has almost no chance of winning the election, and therefore they may actually go for them. They have done that before, and they are likely to. Now we are talking about analytics.
Jega is using voter rationality, which makes sense, not on structure. Structure-wise, they will probably go NNP. But you say voters will say, well, what the heck? Why am I going to NNP when he's going to win? So why don't you vote for Tinubu, APC, and vote for Kwankwaso? So we don't know how the voters will actually
until they read the polls.
So if I asked you how you think the voter will behave, you won't have any positive,
nobody can say
I will have some projections or assumptions. One of them will be that I think because of the economic issues, a significant number of voters will make a change because of what they feel. Those who are rational, educated, I can even call them urban-based, young professionals.
A change towards what they've tried before, a change towards what,
this way, 80 out of them, let's assume 100% that's going to make a change. 70 would change to something they've not tried before. 30 will stay. Now the question is, what's that 100? Is that 130 million people, 200 people, 1,000 people? So that unknown number that will shift, whether it's in Kano, in Imo, and that unknown number that will stay with their party loyalties, with relatives, with maybe ethnicity, we don't know. That's what makes this election unknown. But you can predict that, like I said, Kano, the ruling party, will probably do well. Atiku Abubakar will do well, as the poll is showing, because of other factors. And then Kwankwaso will probably, maybe, do well or carry the day, depending on how those voters are able to say, Kwankwaso, you take governor, we'll go this way.
My own feeling is that in the north, at least, party loyalty will probably still be the main factor in the elections. But as you said, there is disappointment with the record of the administration, even though the presidential ticket of the APC tries very cleverly to say, well, this is a different person, it's not the same administration. So, but you know, if there is disenchantment like that with the security and the economic situation, most likely it will affect voter turnout. So you may end up maybe with fewer voters, but those that bother to turn up at the polls in most of the northern states, as far as I can see, will probably still vote along party lines. Exactly.
We'll have to leave it there. Well, according to this day, Atiku has 23 states, sure of 25%. Tinubu has 20 states, he's sure of 25%. We'll have to leave it there, gentlemen. Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you very much. Mahmud, Jega, as always.